Hello there, and welcome to the Falsely Accused Networks podcast. My name is Mike Thompson, and I'm founder and director of the Falsely Accused Network. We support anyone falsely accused of domestic abuse in England and Wales. We run a helpline. We can refer you to legal professionals. We have mental health support, and we have a private peer group support network as well. If you've been falsely accused of domestic abuse, you can contact us via telephone, which is 0204 538 8788, or you can email us on support@falselyaccusednetwork.co.uk or visit our website www.falselyaccusednetwork.co.uk. You will be supported, and we will get you through the worst time of your life. Today, on our episode 3 of podcast, I'm joined by a very special guest, someone with over 30 years experience as a solicitor, a financial specialist, and a leader in the legal profession. Shak Inayat is a principal solicitor at Penn Chambers in London, co-founder of the Hexagon Legal Network, and a senior director at the Penn Group of Companies. He is dual qualified not only as a solicitor with the SRA, but also regulated by the FCA as a mortgage, protections and equity release specialist. But Shak's story goes beyond law and finance. While studying law at university, he also served with HM Reserves in the Army and trained as an all-arms commando, a background that has clearly shaped his discipline, resilience and determination. In this episode, we'll explore Shak's journey into law, his military background, and then dive deep into some of the most pressing issues facing families today, which are false allegations, parental alienation, paternity fraud and spousal visa scams. We'll also be asking Shak for his tips and guidance for anyone navigating the family court system right now. So, let's get into it. Shak, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you too.
And how are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
And thank you for venturing over the Pennines from Yorkshire to come and see us at this side. You're technically in Cheshire, actually. You're not in Lancashire.
Is that right?
Moment, so that might put you at ease a bit. If that's okay.
It's all the same. Once you get over the Pennines, it's all the same. So I'll be happy to go back at some point. But it's a delight to be here.
No, thank you. And I think on behalf of us all, thank you so much for taking time. We know how busy you are. We really do.
Oh, you're welcome. Pleasure
so,
to be here.
Let's go right to the beginning. You're born and raised in Bradford, West Yorkshire. You're a very proud Yorkshire man. So, tell us about growing up in Bradford in the 70s and 80s and how it shaped you.
It's difficult to convey how childhood was in the tumultuous period of the 70s and perhaps the early 80s. Mm-hmm. I was born in 67, so you start having an idea about life and things. You know, by the time you're 7, 8, 9, you have a sense of identity, etc. For me, Yorkshire was two things. On the one hand, it was a place that was warm, loving, kind. People really cared about you. I have very deep and fond memories of an old lady, God rest her soul, who was old even when I was a child, called Mrs. Preston, who used to live right at the end of our terrace street. And she would come out daily when there was 3 of us, young boys playing, and she would give us one boiled sweet each.
Wow.
And then on the other end of the terrace was a lady called Mrs. Ward, who would do exactly the same. And they were wonderful humans. Mm. They kept us on the straight and narrow. Mm-hmm. They would look at us as school marms and make sure that we didn't get caught misbehaving. And they were lovely. And what was also interesting was that scattered on that street were people who'd come to England post-Second World War, mm-hmm. and they were now elderly, but they may have come as younger men and women. So it wasn't unusual for me to interface on a daily basis with people with what to me were European names, but were quite normal to me.
Yeah.
I knew a Veronica Soslowska, and I used a Stuppens, etc. And it was just all very normal. So it's such a huge mix of people and fascinating. They all had their own ways and means. My next door neighbour, but one, he would be constantly in his garden chopping wood. What we thought was behind the times. And ironically, we've all gone full circle and we all know.
That's quite trendy now, isn't it?
Right,
yeah,
exactly. But he was a grafter, and he was there in his white shirt, sweating as he chopped wood every day and was sawing it. So those were really lovely, warm, special times that gave me my true connection with Yorkshire. But then there was an ugly side to that, and it would be wrong to deny that.
Yeah.
It'd be wrong just to make.
It can be a trap we fall into, isn't it, of romanticising things? And
right.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. We've got to be honest, and we can't be afraid to offend people.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me who I am today. And I think a lot of non-whites of my generation have a very different view to non-whites of this generation, because we were much hardier. And it wasn't unusual to navigate a street, a path, a direction of travel. We're going into town, we can't go this way, we've got to go that way, because it wasn't unusual to see young men, shaven heads, Doc Marten boots, which were then a symbol of oppression, but now very trendy, and I've even owned pairs with red bootlaces, which were the symbol of the then National Front, which then became the BNP.
Mm-hmm.
And there were very unpleasant experiences, and there were very unpleasant times.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it made us hardy, it made us navigate, and actually over time it made me really feel sorry for them, because for me, mostly the common denominator of meeting those of that ilk were that actually they just lacked education, and often many of them just weren't the brightest kids on the block.
Yeah.
And so it was more, I understand where you're coming from because you don't understand enough, rather than them seeing them as the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And to a large extent, I feel that way today about people who are, say, right of centre. I don't like using the word far right. Far is a relative term, and it can mean different thing to different people, but they're right of centre, and perhaps too far right of centre. And I just think, actually, statistically, they spout information which is incorrect. They genuinely believe the bile they spout, but it's through a lack of education. I remember one chap, I won't mention his surname because I don't want to embarrass him if you ever were to see this, but his name was Stephen. And irony of all ironies, he was in the National Front, or certainly dressed that way. But a thoroughly lovely young man. And what was bizarre was that he genuinely had issues with ethnic minorities, and we only sat together at school in German of all the subjects. So there's a massive irony to that, and he was so, let's say, challenged with understanding how German works. I found relatively straightforward because it's just words connected to words, right? They're just joined up words. I'd have to sit and I'd have to help the poor chap. But a thoroughly decent chap. I just wouldn't want to see him on a dark alley one day. So you got this real mix of bizarre situations where on the one hand is that, the next minute he's asking me questions, and on the other he's doing things that he ought not to be doing with respect to the ethnic minority. So there's that huge mix of all of that stuff, and it bonkers. It was lovely, and not so lovely in equal measure. But my roots are there. That is home, and forever shall it be home. And I don't think I'd change it for anything. And perhaps on another day, we can look at the implications of how people like myself and my generation grew up dealing with that sort of stuff, and now what is probably very much more benign indirect discrimination, how they're so much more aggrieved by that than my generation now, and we can't connect because we're saying, oh God, you're moaning about that now, are you? Crikey Moses.
That'd be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we do have these conversations. I speak to people of my generation who are from other minorities, and they're saying, God, so-and-so down the road is complaining about X, Y, and Z. And it's such a small relative issue. And they're expecting perfection, and life, wake up, smell the coffee, is not perfect. So people are going to have idiosyncrasies. They're going to have some biases. If you want to say that's racist, and you're taking it to a different level. But, they're all biases. And the net effect of that is, I just think, we generally tend to roll our eyes and say, okay, well, it was worse in them days. I don't want to be an old codger who says... it was much worse in my day, that I don't know what I was talking about and stuff. But by the same token, I do worry for all people of whatever sexual orientation, persuasion, colour, ethnicity, religion, not having a thick enough skin. And I don't know where that went. I don't know how we lost that. I'm digressing now, but I'll finish off with saying I had a wonderful time, and I do remember very much growing up in an environment where we used to say sticks and stone may break my bones, and I don't know how that came out of our vocabulary because we don't have it anymore. But wonderful times nonetheless. It was a wonderful upbringing.
That upbringing, how did that move you towards the law? Where did that come from? That's my next question. You grew up in that Bradford in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, 80s. What particular moments or influence you pushed you towards the law?
Yeah, let's say 70s and 80s. I'm not that old.
Yeah, we'll say 70s. Yeah, that's great. Late 60s.
But, all right. I meet lots and lots of people who say, I got into law because X, Y, and Z happened. And they had this huge traumatic event where it's, something happened somewhere down the line. And I may or may not have had that. I've tried to reason why that happened in later years. And I'm drawing correlations, I'm joining dots which may or may not have been there. My mum and dad separated when I was very young. I don't think that had an impact on me. I just was too young. I was about 3, maybe 4. And it was bizarre. It genuinely was bizarre and probably completely inappropriate nowadays. But I remember being the whole Asian community there. Yeah. And they were horrified that my mum was separating.
Oh, wow.
She was seen as almost a persona non grata. She was just vilified.
Was it that bad then?
It was really bad. It was really bad. I remember all sorts of other things that are just actually too horrible to even speak on this podcast today. That happened as a consequence of my mum leading a trail of becoming a divorced woman. But I do remember going into being very, very young and going into what I now realise was a solicitor's practice. And my mum must have been getting some family legal advice. And I remember looking up at the chap on the other side of the desk, and it was just a row and row and rows of books. And what I now know to be the All England Law Reports, which are all blue-bound volumes. We now have all of that on a disc. And I remember saying to him, have you read all them books? And so-and-so lied to me and said he had. I'll forgive him for that, because I think it engendered an idea in my mind. I wanted to be as clever as him. And he can't have read them all, but there we go. It worked. And I grew up watching a program called Petrocelli. I mean, I'm not sure many people know what that was.
I'm not familiar with that, no.
It was an American program and there was this the equivalent, an attorney equivalent, and he basically kept making money doing a big case, righting a wrong, a falsely accused type of scenario, and then he'd get his $50,000, finally make enough money, and then he'd find a reason why he had to give that money away. So he was constantly poor, and he lived in the back of a camper van, and his long-suffering wife also lived with him on that. That's my memory of it. And I thought, when I grow up, I want to be like him. That was the abiding memory for me, not the solicitor telling me the porkies, but the Petrocelli. And I remember thinking, I want to do that. I want to be like him when I grow up. Not sure I've grown up yet, but when I grow up, I would like to be like him. Not live in a camper van, though. But there we go. So that's what it was. And I've never not known a period of time where I didn't want to be a solicitor. Throughout all my consciousness, all my conscious years, I've always said I always want to be a solicitor, but not necessarily knowing why. But they're the two things I can put it down to. Strange.
Do you remember another programme in the 70s called Crown Court?
I do.
Granada TV used to make
right. I do, and it was very solemn, wasn't it?
Yes.
Very. What was really fascinating about the eloquence of it all, the gentlemanliness, and that's not to exclude women from that, but it's honourable,
yes,
and had huge amounts of decorum, and their language was elegant, beautiful, well reasoned, and they spoke the Queen's English, and I do believe that that's what I joined the profession for, that we would have that gentlemanliness, that honour, that integrity. I'm not sure my profession still abides by those principles religiously, without exception. But yes, I do remember it was really good.
And there's some fantastic actors that went on to massive things like Richard Wilson. It was what was he? He ended up playing Victor Meldrew.
Victor Meldrew, yeah, that's right.
The way he spoke in that, he was on it. He was, Barrister Mr. Parsons. Off the top of my head now, because I've watched quite a few of them, and his English in that is just a delight to listen to.
Yeah,
it really is.
They speak well, and it's a joy to behold, because like building a table, it's a craft, and if you build a beautiful table, it's always going to be a beautiful table. Language for lawyers has a beauty to it. It's a craft, and it takes skill and endeavour to make that into a real good craft. But I do also remember Rumpole of the Bailey as well. It was fantastic as well, and I loved that. And I would love to be able to go into court just chomping on a cigar as well, which would be lovely, but might not happen anymore.
not now.
But there is a true story, and I promise I won't digress much further, but there's a true story of a court, so I won't name the court and therefore won't identify the judge, but there was a circuit judge, and some hearings are done in open court where you understand them to be in a court, and then there are some hearings that are done in what we call in chambers, and they're technically private, and family hearings are technically all in chambers, regardless of where they're held. And so he would actually call us to his private chambers to do the chambers directions appointment, and you would walk in and he'd be literally chomping on a cigar, and you could cut the air with the smoke of the cigar. He's not putting it down, and quite rightly so, I would say. Yeah. Fantastic old gentleman. He's not around anymore, I don't think, but yeah, he would sit presiding over.
I think that's fantastic. I'd love to see that. If you could have took a picture of that, that'd be marvellous.
Right. It was brilliant.
You won't see that anymore.
No.
You won't see that anymore.
I know, sad. So the alarms would go off and I went, I've been out of pain. There we go.
Did you always know you wanted to specialise in family law, or did that come at a later date? Was it just, was your focus, I want to be a solicitor, and then you decided later, or did it? Tell us about that.
I'm going to embarrass myself now.
Oh no.
I promised myself when I came on here I'd be honest to the T, and I'm going to be honest to a T. At university, when I did my law degree, I was always fascinated by crime Crime actually on an academic level is fascinating. It's really, really interesting. It's lovely to read about, it's lovely to write about, and it's lovely to articulate and moot over on an academic level. The reality, though, my gosh, is much more challenging. Late nights, police stations, unforgiving clients, and so on. So when I eventually got my training contract, for me it was, I want to be a criminal solicitor. When I got into the practical reality, and I went, oh crikey, bleep this for a game of soldiers. I'm not that particularly interested in it. So at the same time, I was dead keen to get into court. This is the embarrassing part. So having not come from a family of lawyers, solicitors, you have nobody really to guide you. And so what happened was, I was just saying to my training principal, well, what's the quickest way to get into court? She said, family. So, okay, you can do your family seat first. So you have to do different areas of law. So I did my family seat, and I took to it like a duck to water because I was really interested in getting into the courtroom, and I did. And it was something that resonated with me, something that I felt naturally capable of doing.
I would say, though, again, as a non-lawyer looking at it, the crosses over family and crime very, very much.
Always.
So it's actually probably a better... You were still getting your exposure to criminal as well as working with family.
Yeah, the strange thing about family... So, to finish that story, so I went into court, and then I realised once I'd been pigeonholed into family, I couldn't get out. So a few years later, I said, yeah, I've enjoyed myself, thank you very much, I'm now going into civil litigation. They said, well, no, that's not how it works. You're here now, you're here for life. And 30 years later, it'll be 30 years this November. Wow. I've ended up in family law. It's been a very interesting career. But you're right about family. It does interface often with crime. Absolutely. And it's not just necessarily the sort of crime you might imagine on a domestic violence level. There might be crime, regulatory crime. So a couple going through difficulties, and he's dipped his hand in the till of his company, which has led to him cutting corners, and there's regulatory issues and their criminal offences as well. But you also need to be a social worker when you're a solicitor. You also need to be a good mum and dad. You need to be a counsellor. You need to know company commercial law, and you need to know financial services information, because all of that interfaces within the microcosm of that one particular family. Yeah. So you've got to be a bit more savvy about those things. And if we get time, I'll tell you a true story about how I managed to pull the wool over a solicitor just because she wasn't financially savvy. Oh, wow. We may come to that. Yeah. We'll see. But there's plenty of stories. If you don't have that broad knowledge, you're going to be challenged, I think, because you never know when it's going to turn up and hit you in the face. Yeah. So I did get my play indirectly without doing the police stations, thank gosh. Whilst being a family solicitor, so it was good.
Yeah, you've got that, and you have that exposure to crime and family, and it really does cross over. I think that I always have to have a lot of respect for solicitors and barristers, because you're dealing with the worst of humanity in crime and family as well, because it crosses over. And I don't know how you people cope with it. On that day in, day out. 30 years you've been exposed to this story and allegations which can be true, some real nasty cases you've dealt with. And I don't know how, on a mental, psychological side, how people like yourself and the many thousands of others of your colleagues out there how you cope with it.
It's an interesting question. It's interesting that you said with worst to the effect of the worst of society. Well, you might be dealing with the best of society. Yeah. Often those who put their head above the parapet, they want to challenge societal norms. There are lots of political organisations out there that are being persecuted, prosecuted, and so on. That requires solicitors and barristers to stand up to the government and say, no, that's undemocratic or it's anti-democratic. And so that takes the best of us, and that can be a real privilege to do that. Where you're dealing with people, and I don't do crime, so I wouldn't have to deal with people who've been particularly the worst inside to me. I do meet them on a family context, people who've, for example, harmed children or harmed their partner, and sometimes it's pretty grim.
Yeah.
The abiding thing for me is, one, I'm not the judge.
That's right.
I need to understand my role in this, and my role is to never lie. Like, if I got £1 every time I had to prove to people or tell people that solicitors don't lie, and they watch that Jim Carrey film Liar Liar and so on and so forth. But I genuinely, in 30 years of being an advocate, 30 years of dealing with people in thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of paper, correspondence, communications, pleadings, statements, we don't ever lie. We might omit information which you think is, well, that's close enough to a lie, but it's not for me to prove my case. It's for them to prove the case against my client. So we never, literally in 30 years, there's one chap who I told him to withdraw one sentence because I thought he'd lied in court. Other than that, they've never lied. So what we're doing is we're putting forward a case that is mitigating the harms that somebody may have done. So we're trying to present them as positively as the circumstances lie. If you're a horrible, horrible human, you're not really going to be presented much better, but you'll do your best. And if we don't do that, then we really aren't a democracy.
That's right.
And that's the fundamental thing for me. And you know, it will come to me being a squaddy later, but one of my friends was complaining about Just Stop Oil. And they drive me bonkers, just like everybody else, when you need to be somewhere. Yeah. They stop the roads, etc., etc. We have laws for that. Let's prosecute them for them obstructing a public highway, but we don't need a special law for them. That becomes...
I agree.
Draconian. That becomes authoritarian. And he was saying, you know, I'd slammed them in the clink for God knows how many years. I said, but what did your forebears die for?
No.
If we don't allow people to democratically raise their voice, then we've lost the plot.
Yes.
And that is the other part of the same coin, where we have to help even the most heinous in our society. No. If we don't do that, we'll help the nice guys.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden we get into some sort of authoritarian, where it becomes 1984.
Yes.
And that we've got to fight against that. So we've got to defend the bad guys.
Yes.
Very quickly a point. Tommy Robinson was once held in contempt of court for doing something in Leeds County Court, Leeds Crown, and the judge said when he was arrested, they said, we're going to, you're going to be heard in the afternoon. It was about 11 o'clock, don't quote me on the time, but it was about 11 o'clock. He had to find a solicitor who happened to be in court. He didn't even get a barrister, it was a solicitor, and the solicitor said, okay, I'll represent you, but I'm going to apply for adjournment. You're at risk of losing your liberty. You need to have a fair trial. And the judge said, no, we're going to proceed with this. And then in the afternoon, the solicitor said, well, but I don't know how to defend this case because I don't have enough data. I don't have enough case case information. And the judge said, well, I'm going to proceed anyway. He's guilty as sin. Well, no, that's not acceptable.
Yeah, I agree.
And then he had a crowdfunding, one of those where you sign up to. And even I paid money to that because even people I dislike, especially people I dislike, have a right to a fair trial.
Absolutely.
If we don't do that, we've lost it.
Yes.
Don't complain.
I completely
agree. I did pay towards it, and I remind people I did that. And I remind my colleagues in the military and in Civilian Street that even just up oil have rights.
Absolutely.
And they can do that. And if they break the law, fine, prosecute them.
Yeah.
But only in the same way, the same level.
Yes.
Fair but firm and equal. So that's why I think people defend these people. Remember, a lot of them may be circumstantially guilty, and that's exactly what falsely accused is all
Absolutely,
about. There may be a smoking gun there, but it's not always the case.
Completely agree, and that's something we're proud of at False Accused Network. We're not here to. I'm not the judge or jury when they come through in the helpline. I work on good faith.
Right.
It's the man tells me he's innocent. That's all I need.
Right.
And then we carry on. I'm not, and we never ever start trying to work out if this is true or whatever. We go, we get them the help, and that is really important that we maintain that.
Right.
It's not my job. It's like with you when you just said then, it's not your job. You're not the jury, are you? But you're not the district judge. You're there to represent your client.
Right.
And that's amazing. Yeah.
I think where I would have real problems, I've never had problems in the past dealing with unpleasant humans, is because they have rights, and I fundamentally believe in democracy, etc., etc. And a fair trial is a massive element of that. I think if somebody was saying, I had done X, I've harmed this person, I enjoyed it, and so on and so forth, and revelled in it, and they want to do it more, then I'd have a problem.
Absolutely.
And maybe I'm not a big enough man to be able to deal with that. Thankfully, I've not had that to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I think people like that have got mental health issues.
Absolutely.
And they would need, actually not a solicitor, but a psychiatrist to help them.
Yeah.
But I've never had that. I've had people who said, well, it wasn't quite like that. It wasn't this, or I just wasn't even there. I've had cases where people physically weren't even there, and so on.
Yeah.
And it's going through the motions of trying to show that wasn't the case, as the case may be. Interesting.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So in this next section, Shak, I'm going to talk about your days in the army. Now, you did something very unusual, that while you were studying law at the University of East London, you decided to join the Army Reserves. Why did you do that? I can't think of why? It's interesting. I've never heard of this.
There are a lot of us, actually. In the first section we talked about, I'm not really sure why I became a solicitor. Maybe it was a calling, maybe it was a knock on the head, I don't know. The army was very similar. I pieced together certain thoughts in my mind that I think may have done that. And I remember one of those thoughts being, I was in a porter cabin at the failing school that I was attending, the comprehensive school, which I believe got knocked down eventually.
Was that a good or bad day? When
I was a product of it, so I'm passing no comment on it. But it wasn't doing particularly well, and ironically, it was ensconced in the middle of this estate, which surrounded by very working class people, many of whom, not many, some of whom were those Doc Martin wearing individual. So it's kind of like, we had to go past that outer circle to get into the school. So maybe it wasn't a bad thing, but there we go. So I remember doing my A-level English literature, and the school had these porter cabins which were there supposedly for a year, and about year 9 later, and they're all leaky roofs, etc. We were having a lesson in there, and they allowed a person, a military person, somebody from the army, to come in to give a talk, unrelated to the topics that we were doing, but they were just allowed it. I now believe that would have been a staff sergeant or a warrant officer, class 1, maybe class 2, probably class 2. And I just remember him being very smartly dressed in military uniform, in rig, and being impressed. I think it's a little bit to do with my OCD, that I thought he looked very smart. And what really surprised me about what he said was, because you're 16, 17, and you just thought army means I walk around with a rifle in my arm all day long, and I'm just standing around waiting to shoot people. What else do they do? They clearly can't do much else. I genuinely had those thoughts. I knew nobody in the military, any of the branches, and so that's the impression I got. And the impression I also got was that it wasn't very non-white friendly. And he simply said, look, the army is effectively a mirror of civilian society.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a chef in the normal world, real world. So we have chefs in the military. You have accountants in the real world. You have accountants in the military world. You have solicitors, you have accountants, you have engineers, all sorts of things. And we're literally the same. And during the day, we do our day jobs, but we're available to go to war if the need ever arises, and hopefully it never does. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that. And I remember thinking, do they cook the eggs and so on, fry the eggs with a rifle on their back or not? Literally, uneducated I was about that. And I think that stayed with me. And then by the time I got to university, it was really strange because I just said to myself, I want to go and join the army, not knowing anything about it. And I remember going into a careers office and saying I want to join the army, and I didn't know if I wanted to be a reserve or a regular, even though I had a place at university. And they said, well, what do you want to do? Don't know. Well, what are you good at then? And I said, well, I don't really know. And he looked at me with disdain, probably furious at this idiot coming in and saying, I don't know what I do, but I know I want to join the army. People generally tend to want to know where they want to go, but they generally have somebody who's guided them. And he metaphorically rolled his eyes and said, okay, well, what are your hobbies, what are your interests? And I just happened to have this flashback of a memory when I was very, very young, completely hazardous now, but we used to play in this lorry park, and we were so little we would be able to run underneath the axles of the lorries. But I remember that smell, that diesel smell, etc. And thought it could have been crushed and God knows what. But I mean, the vehicles were all parked up for the weekend, but something could have happened. That's why I really got to think about lorries. Second bit of my embarrassment. Really, they're all coming out today, unfortunately. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to put you with transport, the Royal Corps of Transport, 562 Squadron, which is now the Logistics Regiment. Yes. And I went, that sounds like a good idea. So I went and joined the Logistics Corps, and basically they train you up to drive what were then called 4-tonners. And I got pretty bored of that really quickly because that was my only job. And whilst I was having great fun driving around the camp without a HGV license, trying to learn how to drive a truck, I felt I needed something more. And somebody mentioned joining the Royal Marine Reserves, based in London. And I thought, oh, that sounds a bit tough. I'm not going to do that. And there was another unit nearer to where I lived in East Ham called 289 Commando Battery. So it was an artillery unit, but they were commando trained, so they're all part of what's called 3 Commando Brigade. Anybody who says in 3 Commando Brigade, whatever job you do, you've got to be commando trained. So if you're a Royal Marine, you do the Royal Marine Commando course. Everybody else does the All Arms Commando course, which is pretty much the same. And I thought, okay, I'll have a go. And I did. And so during the day, I mean, it's quite surreal looking back.
It's just extraordinary listening to this. I'm like, how did you do it?
It is surreal. But and here's what's interesting. Whilst I was doing my law degree, one of the guys did do RMR London, Royal Marine Reserves London, at the same time.
Oh, wow.
One other guy was in the Parachute Regiment, which in my view, they're the Special Forces units apart from the SAS. And I was in 289 Commando, so we'd go off and do our day jobs. We'd be talking about is law and is it unjust, and using cognitive cerebral intellect, if we have any, to moot arguments, and then in the evening we're getting bashed around on squares, trying to learn how to strip a weapon and parade and salute and march. And it was fantastic. It was just a break from one against the other. And I remember going away, and I just left when I did the commando course. So it takes about a year to get to commando course. So when I went off and did the commando course, came back, and only come back with a little piece. It would get a green beret, but you're not going to bring that into the university. So I had a little piece of cloth, which is your commando flash. It's a black triangular shape with a red dagger in it, a Fairburn Sykes dagger. And I was showing it to my two friends who were Roman Reserves and in the parachute regiment, and other people looking at it. And I thought, I've just been through hell. It was awful, it was horrendous, and now I've only got that to show for it. But by God, that was a long time ago. That was probably 30 years ago. Do you still
own that? You still got it?
Yeah, absolutely. Once a commando, always a commando, in my view, and many others' view. And I became part of a family. Mm-hmm. And we were talking earlier about all those issues about people not liking ethnic minorities. This family is your family. Yeah. They're a very different family, but they're still your family. And we go out on the Commando Association weekends and so on, and nobody gives a fig. Everybody is a brother, and they literally refer to you as a brother. And that camaraderie to me, is phenomenal, and particularly for me in a commando unit, it's even more so the case. But it was weird during the day doing that. On an evening, for example, we might be, if I got guard duty, there was a time where there was a heightened security risk with the IRA, and I don't wish to necessarily get political about that, whether it was right or wrong. Different people will have different views about it, and clearly I have a certain view about it. But I would be on guard, and I remember once at least having live rounds. And if there had been an attack, we're going to be having a ding dong. And then you go back. That in and of itself isn't a challenge. Is then going back to uni the next day and saying, "Oh, by the way, hi, how you doing, kids? Let's go to the canteen and have a cup of coffee together." And you just think that dichotomy was bizarre and amazing, and some of the best years of my life. And in fact, if I'm honest with you, I wish I'd have done more, not less.
I know it means a lot to your military. We went to you took me to the, what was it called now?
The Honourable Artillery Company.
Yes, in London, and that was fantastic. And I remember when you took me there, and we looked. I was just like, it overpowered me. I was like looking around. It was beautiful. It was just a powerful building, but with the history.
Yeah. I mean, that's not my unit, but as a non-regimental member, I'm entitled to go to that unit. And it's been on that site since 1638.
That's right. I couldn't. I was like,
and we're steeped in history. And if you noticed, even though I wore a different cap badge to them, they still all were so welcoming.
That's where I was going to go with that. That I noticed when you were talking to the other. Ex-soldiers. You were all just so friendly with each other and warm and cordial, and it was just a magnificent afternoon. I want to thank you for that. I loved every minute of that.
And there is a slight perversity to it. If in the military, when people are being nice to you, you start to get a little bit worried.
Oh, okay.
So we generally tend to be very denigrating towards each other as a term of endearment.
Yes.
The world just gets turned upside down. And I was there just a few days ago, and I'd gone into a group, and I knew these people, and they're all REME, Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, and I just got both barrels. And they were just having a right old ding dong. And it was, because we like you. And that's how they show their affection for you, and it's a genuine warmth and a brotherhood that that these people in the right day at the right time would have gone the extra mile for you, and if they had to, they'd have died for you, and that gives you a sense of a different type of belonging. I feel a belonging with my own family. I feel a belonging with this family. I feel a belonging to the legal profession. And so you do have those different families that provide you with so much richness to your life that I genuinely, and we do have issues in the military at the moment, but I would genuinely recommend it to a young male, female, man, woman, to engage with that and see what you can get from it, because it will give you a lot. It will take a lot, but it will give you a lot, and it's a fantastic opportunity. And of course, you can join the RAF, or you can join, and the RAF have reserves, and you can join the Royal Naval Reserves, and you can join the Army Reserves. And I think it offers so much, and it adds value to your life in different ways.
And I'm going to tie this in now with this next question. All the work in the military that you did, you were studying law. How has that helped you in your legal career? And do you see parallels between military strategy and legal strategy in court as well?
I do, actually. In terms of how it's helped, I think you can break that into two places. Being in the army as a reserve, for me, gave me a sense of discipline, responsibility, self-worth, self-pride. So there are lots of times in society where those who are superior to you in rank or role or task, whether it's a judge, whether it's an army officer, whether it's just a parent or whomever, your employer, who might not necessarily get it right, and they make you do things that you feel are fundamentally wrong, or whatever the case may be. And as a mark of respect for their position, you say you do that. You can challenge, you can question, etc., but you do that, and it gives you that. It makes that. I found that made all the other things I had to do in civilianry, civilistry, much easier. It engaged my OCD-ness, and even to this day, all my shirts are ironed, all my boots are polished, everything's in its place, and so on. And I'm very regimented. My bed has to be made every morning, and they're all, bed blocks and so on and so forth. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's really very positive, because it keeps me ordered and organised.
Yes.
And I think I get more out of my day from that, because everything has to be done in a sequence. My wife might not agree with that, but that's a different story for a different day. So from a personal perspective, I think it improved me. From a legal perspective...
So in terms of like doing your job, your solicitor work, what the military experience, how has that helped you shape you?
So if I split that into two, then if you think about, I've got a bundle of papers, 1,000 pages of documents to read, and you just think, I'm losing the will to live. Think about running that 9-miler, the 12-miler, and you sometimes just have to get your head down. You're cold, you're wet, you're miserable, you have now got weapon on your back, and you have got webbing on, and you got boots on, you're freezing cold, you're getting a sense of human failure. And excuse me, remember also, we don't have to be there. So you've got this other battle where you're saying to myself, sod this for a game, so I'm going home. I want to go home. So you have to fight all those demons and get your head down and get to the end of it. And you get to the end of it and say, right, crack that, job done, let's move on to the next thing. That helps me read those papers, if you think, because there's times where you want to quit reading those papers and you might start scanning them, but there might be something material in that one page you miss. So it gives you that discipline to do that. And I think it has made me, keep going when the chips are down, and it's Friday afternoon and it's Friday early evening, it's 7 o'clock, you've had enough, you want to go home, but I've still got another 300 pages to read. I've got to read them before Monday. I think the last point is strategy. Yeah. Strategy of life and strategy of work. When you're preparing a case, for me, you have to look at where you're going. You have to look at where we are, what the obstacles are, what you've got to achieve, and then how do I get to convince a judge about my position. That's like being on a hillside. We've got a troop, a platoon, 30 men, we've got a river crossing, we've got a hill, we need to get food, supplies, and so on, where they need to get to. I remember when I was doing my officer training, I was sat on a hillside, and this poor adjutant was trying to teach the less intelligent, I was going to say thick.
No.
But I'm not allowed to say that. So I'm going to say I was a thick Shak. It's self-deprecating. We're allowed to self-deprecate. And I was probably pretty thick as mince at the time. And it probably have to cut this out, but never mind. And he was saying, Shak, what do you see in front of you? And I said, well, I can see a hill. Right, okay, what else can you see? And he was making me see things. Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, I can just about see a river. So he's spotting me. Right, what's your problem with the river? Well, we've got to get troops over it. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, they've got to chain, it's going to slow us down. Yeah. We're now going to factor all these things in. So all that strategy, I literally took into a courtroom with me. And it was just, well, what's my problem? Yeah. What have I got to overcome? What have I got to do with? So I felt it was brilliant. Yeah. I became a better lawyer by doing all that stuff. I could immediately sense a change. Yeah, I'm not sure I became a better soldier, but I certainly became a better lawyer.
I know it's something when you've helped our guys, you always say, "What's the strategy? What's the plan? Where?" Yeah, and it's really important, and that's how you've learned that from the military's helped you. We've got you there quicker by the sound of things.
Yeah, I think when you look at junior officers, senior NCOs, they cut the wheat from the chaff. They just say, right, where are we? What do we need to do? Because we're going there, right? It's what I call in my language, yesterday, today, tomorrow. Where were we? Where are we? And where are we going? Yeah. And if you can break that down, you're there. If you're going to mince your words with 30 troops who stood out in the freezing cold, they're hungry and miserable, they're going to be pretty unhappy troops. So you've got to get straight to the point, get the job done and move on. And I think that helps in my day job. Certainly I learned the hard way in my military job, not to mince my words. And you know me, I can talk for flaming England. So you have to learn to cut that down.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking about your past and in particular the military section as well. That helps us build a picture of you and how you approach things. So now we're going to jump into what we face on a daily basis, which is false allegations of domestic abuse. So how common are they?
That is a really difficult question, especially if you remember in the earlier segment, we don't pass a judgment, we present cases, and so sometimes genuinely you don't know. You genuinely think that somebody might be innocent, and then something just happened, and an eye twitch, a movement, which was a case that actually happened to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I got this all completely wrong. And other times you think, there's no way we're getting out of this. And then, you know, the more you dig in the papers, you see something that makes it implausible, sometimes impossible, that the accused person had committed an offence. I remember doing a criminal case once, and everything hinged on a spoon, and he was accused of dealing drugs, and this was whilst I was a trainee solicitor. Remember, we had to do different seats of work, so that was a short period of time that I did do crime, which made me realise I don't want to do crime. and where that spoon was found completely exonerated him, completely. And I can't remember the entire details of the case, but I remember us literally mapping out where this flipping spoon was found, which I think they've been using to heat up drugs, etc., and so on and so forth. And you know, cases do get to that place, but you've got to do the hard yards, and they're thankless periods where you've got 900 jobs to do, but every person, every client deserves that time. And if we hadn't dug into that, we thought, he's going down. But the reality was he was professing his innocence, and that spoon exonerated him. I've had a client once where he's saying, Shak, yes, I did go to a house. She accused me of a terrible sexual impropriety, and it wasn't. I wasn't there. It wasn't me, etc. And it just so happened on that particular day he'd chosen to buy some sweets, some Asian sweets, and he'd gone into a shop and tapped his card, and it just so happened that the tapping of the card was able to prove that it was that shop at that particular time, which just happened to be too far to him for being at the house at the time when he was alleged to have imposed himself on her, and it all hinged on a receipt.
Wow.
So, that's the precarious nature of the false allegations. I think the history of false allegations is becoming worse.
Yes. Can you think of something that made it go this way?
Yeah. There have been particular pieces of legislation that have created a perfect storm, a perfect negative environment for that to happen. If we go against the backdrop of how we as a society and where we're going, and we talk less about honour, less about integrity, less about truthfulness, and it's all about me, myself, and I. As a society, we're definitely going that way. I believe, sadly. We don't think about the greater good. It's all about me. Whatever, I'm a vegan. I want to go this way. I'm Asian. I want to go that way. It's all about me. It's nothing about, what benefits society as a whole. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with being Asian or being a vegan. But we've got to look in the round of all of these things. So we've got society becoming more and more selfish, and yet on the other hand, we've then, with less accountability, with less willingness to accept wrongness, that I wasn't right. With hindsight, I accept that. Nobody will step up to the plate. Well, not nobody, but a lot of people won't. So this selfishness is becoming cancerous in society. Then you've got things like the LASPO, as we call it, Legal Aid Sentencing and Punishment of Offenders Act 2012.
And what was it about that particular legislation that you believe is possibly, not entirely, but getting us in this direction?
So what happened with LASPO, the government at the time of the day, and whichever, whether you're blue or red or anything in between, they're all effectively behaving the same, i.e. you want to cut the legal aid budget, and if we cut the legal aid budget, we save money, fantastic, great, but by the same token, access to justice diminishes substantially, and that then, to me, damages the quality of democracy in our nation. So I don't agree with it as a matter of principle. But with LASPO, what happened was they effectively took legal aid, public funding, as we now call it, away from most areas of law, including things like housing, welfare benefits. Don't quote me on those, but they certainly took it away from family. And the impact of that was that if there were perpetrators of domestic violence, they were then interviewed, they were cross-examining the poor victim, and that's why we have QLRs, etc. now, because it's just anathema that you have to face the perpetrator in court. But that was an outcome of that because legal aid had been withdrawn, and effectively the only way you could get public funding, legal aid, was by there being you meet the criteria, i.e. you've got a case of merit, you meet the financial criteria and a new additional criteria, which was that you were a victim of domestic violence.
So then, is it? I know some of your colleagues, fellow solicitors, have said that was a pivotal point in seeing an explosion of the, how do I put it, the incentive for somebody to make a false allegation, because then they get legal aid. So, and we know, we know, of course, there's plenty of genuine victims out there. I hate domestic abuse, and you do, and we're very supportive of genuine victims of domestic abuse, but we're here to help the people who've been falsely accused. And that, to me, sounds like was a pivotal point of where it moved to this explosion of what we're seeing now.
Yeah, absolutely with you, 100%. Nobody should have to suffer any domestic violence whatsoever. Particularly psychological violence is a big one for me, as well as sexual violence. A huge no-no. Absolutely. I don't think any right-minded person will go against that. But we need to get it right, and we need to be fair. So what happened effectively with LASPO was that in order to get public funding, you had to make an allegation of domestic violence. And if you didn't, you weren't eligible because you didn't meet the third limb of the criteria. And you get double bubble, because if you then make the allegation domestic violence, that gets you the public funding. So you're now in a very strong bargaining position, often in a better bargaining position than the person you've accused, because they get no public funding. They don't even have access to a solicitor, or certainly not a barrister. And then on top of that, they may then get investigated for a crime, and then there's all sorts of very, very draconian, onerous bail conditions attached to them. Not seeing the children, not returning back to the family home, not being anywhere near the alleged victim, etc. And so the person who's making the allegation then gets this bubble in which they can live in. Often I feel, and I might be wrong on this, but I feel that they just then can play happy families. And whereas this person, and it can be male or female, is accused of this, and he's in, sofa surfing, he's got nowhere to go, or she's got nowhere to go. We get men living in cars, ringing up.
Yeah, I'm in a car, Mike.
And their lives are a complete and utter car crash, and they're living in this very soft cotton bubble of normality. And then on top of that, then they then deny them access to the children, and that's having a massive impact on the mental health of the person accused, but also on the children who are really confused, etc. So it serves my purpose. If I make an allegation, I'll get legal aid, I'll get him out of my life, and he can't come back to the home, and I stop him from seeing the kid there. That'll show you. Now, again, I'll only say it one more time because it needs to be taken as read that nobody, I believe, in their right mind would support somebody who is a perpetrator of DV, sexual violence, child sexual exploitation or abuse in any way, shape or form. But we can't just have it so far swung the other way that the person so accused is left literally living in a car crash of a world, in a surreal world where nothing makes any sense anymore, and they're seen as the devil incarnate. The language used of them is that
the regime guilty, isn't it? It's like
literally, and that goes. That really was a problem. I think by the time we got the Serious Crime Act 2015, that was when we passed legislation. When I say we, the government passed legislation that effectively made coercive and controlling behaviour a criminal offence. Now, in the strict sense of the word, coercive and controlling behaviour is pernicious. It's disgraceful.
Horrible.
And the way I try to explain coercive controlling behaviour is where what you do as a normal person, you're going down a line, get up in the morning, I have a coffee, I get changed, I have a shower, I go out to the gym, I then go out and see friends, I go to work, and then I come home, I have my dinner, and then I go to bed. That's your normal line. Whatever line you go down, and then somebody comes in and changes that, where you can't go to the gym. Let's take a very stereotypical position. A man saying you can't go to the gym because you're half dressed. I don't like other men looking at you. That's now coercive controlling behaviour. I made you deviate from what was a reasonable norm.
It's robbing people's independence choices, isn't it?
Right.
So that's how they operate. It's like, I mean, I've heard of some shocking cases,
and there are some horrible
horrors.
ones where let's take again a stereotypical scenario: a very jealous boyfriend, husband won't let them go out and see their friends or their family, and so on. Horrible. And they'll give them X amount of pounds per week. They won't give them a mobile phone. That to me is coercive controlling behaviour,
and that is a crime, and it's disgusting. And another one, a common one I hear. This time it's a male victim, and it'll be, my ex said if I don't do X, she will take the kids away from me.
Exactly that. But you try and report that to the police. I think you're going to have a challenge.
And this is the issue, is that the men do report these things to the police, and the police are, oh well, no, not interested.
Right.
Or we'll get back to you. That's another common one.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll embarrass myself one more time and tell you where the reality comes in, and I'll do it by way of an example. I think examples are really useful. My wife went on holiday with some friends to Milan. Then when she came back, we went on a holiday, and then when we came back from there, she went on holiday with her family, her own extended family. And so she'd had 3 relatively big holidays in a very short period of time, just how circumstances dictated it. And what I said to her was, look, I've ramped up the credit card. Where I feel a bit poor at the moment. Can you just ease off on the spending for now? And those pair of shoes that you wanted to buy, please leave it this month. Let me get clear off the credit cards and so on, and then buy them in 2 months' time or whatever, or don't buy them at all. And I think that's sensible financial management of your home. And there'll be times where she said the same to me. Often probably about my drinking, but that's a different story for another day. And now that to me is not coercive controlling behaviour, but by any stretch of the imagination. Now imagine we separated, and 4 months later she goes to police, and she was saying, he would not let me buy a pair of shoes. He was financially controlling me. Well, actually, strictly speaking, she's not incorrect. But is it coercive and controlling behaviour? No. And that nuance of that is never investigated.
Yes.
The police always go down the route of, tell me what he did. He didn't let me do this, didn't let me do that, didn't let me do, but without context. No contextualisation, which is everything, and therefore then they investigate those crimes. And I'll give you a really good example of a client. He and his wife had been married half a dozen or so years. They had 2 children, about 4 and 2. Good family, etc., etc. And then he felt that she was behaving strangely. He felt that she might be having an affair. Didn't say anything, but was suspicious. And then the children go to bed at about 6 o'clock. He told me they're done, dusted by 7 o'clock at the very latest. At about 6 o'clock, she said, I'm going out for a walk. And he said, okay, I'll sort the children out and off you go. And I thought, not really sure why she's going out, but he's got these thoughts in his mind. She said, I won't be long, I'll come back. By about 9 o'clock, this is a true story, by about 9 o'clock, he's saying, where are you? I'm now worried about you. No longer thinking she's with somebody else.
Yes.
He's thinking something else has happened. She said, I'm by the school, which was very close to their house. I'll be home very shortly. So 15 minutes later, he rung and he said, look, the school's 5 minutes away. Where are you? Okay, blah, blah, blah. And he made a series of about 3 or 4 calls in about 30 minutes saying, look, are you okay? I'll come and get you. But you're stuck in the house with 2 sleeping children. But I'll come and get you. What's going on? Tell me, etc. He got arrested for coercive controlling behaviour because he'd made a number of calls and not allowing her the freedom to go where she pleased. That's where it all goes wrong. It's truly bonkers. And
it sounds like to me, in that example you've just given, and a similar attitudes I've heard from the police, it's like the mens rea or mental intention seems to be completely ignored by the police. Because to me how you've explained that, to me that is not coercive controlling behaviour, not at all.
Not at all.
That's just checking up on his wife.
Right.
Is she all right? And
Right.
she's misleading him. I don't see. I struggle with how the police then are seeing that as coercive controlling behaviour. That's what I struggle with.
I do agree with you wholeheartedly, and the perversity of it is, I don't think my wife would ever accuse me of coercive controlling behaviour because she knows all my bank numbers and bank cards. Sorry about Mr. Bank Manager, I'm not supposed to do that. And I don't know any of hers. I genuinely wouldn't know where to start to log into her account. She can log into mine, she transfers money, does what she wants.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I look at some of the allegations made against these falsely accused men about coercive and controlling behaviour, and I think, well, I could very easily be guilty of that, and I could be very easy. Everything's about context, and you're right, it's about the mens rea, the mental act of doing something of that intention, which is often missing. And what we've got as a negative outcome, and there's lots of positive outcomes of the #MeToo movement and so on and so forth, is that we've got some sections of society that say all women should be believed regardless, and the net effect of that is that's enough for there to be what we call prima facie. On the face of it, there's enough evidence of acts to warrant a further investigation. But do the hard yards, guys. Okay, fine, arrest, get statements, and then get the context. But if you're going to take 9 months to get context for the circumstances surrounding that, then we're all going to hell in a handcart, because these children then don't see the father for that period of time. He can't move into the house for that period of time. The mortgage has to be paid, and he's living in a hovel somewhere if he's lucky. And that's where it all starts going wrong. So in answer to your question about where it all started going wrong, and where falsely accused comes into play, is LASPO did that, and the Serious Crime Act had a real massive impact, because it's very easy to make an allegation.
It's so badly written. Again, I, as a non-lawyer, as everybody knows, I'm not a lawyer. I approach these things as a member of the public and as a person that's been falsely accused. So when I read these laws, I'm looking at them, that is so badly written.
Yeah, it's
so open. It's so wide.
Right.
And then we notice in it with cases that you have, where it's like,
right,
this man wasn't behaving coercively. He was just like in that case.
If you show regard, if you show consideration, if you show care and worry, you could be very easily accused of coercive control. And if you look at the code for Crown prosecutors, who then have to interpret that and determine whether or not there's going to be a charging event or not, it's far, far removed from that. But there is a laziness in the system. There's this natural, there's an unnatural desire to prosecute because it's violence against women and girls. And I completely support the eradication.
All against that, aren't we?
Exactly. Yeah. My one gripe with eradicating issues about eradicating violence against women and girls, well, what about men who are victims of domestic violence? Well, what about men who are victims of violence? So the concept in itself worries me, but but as a subspecies of preventing violence against anybody, of course we're not against that. And with all of that and the political narrative, where it's being promulgated from politicians saying we must do this, we must do this, we must do this, we want to have good optics on this, prosecute the damn lot of them, because it looks better and we get greater outcomes, is unhealthy. It's toxic, because as lawyers, as a society, we want those who are perpetrators to be appropriately punished, whether that's behind bars, whether it's community punishment order, or whatever the case may be. But we don't want innocent people to go through hell and back. And if they have to go through a period of hell, then make it as flipping short as possible. And that's where we're really failing. So those, for me, are the two main elements of it, coupled with the societal expectation, well, I want this, I want that, and I know I can get away with this, and the blackmail there is huge.
It's something Jessica Wilson said from Eventum in the first episode. She was saying that it's her belief that the police are massively under-resourced with getting the time to look at these. So these 9-12 months are now, unfortunately, very common.
Very common.
Very common.
Oh, very common. I don't see anything hardly ever under that kind of period of time. So their lives are in limbo. They're afraid to tell their employers. They're afraid to move on with their lives. They've got no money. They've got no access to money. They've got no access to even simple things like a lot of people work from home, so they've got all their legal papers there. They've got all their banking details there. They've got their passports there, their driving license there, their company documents, their company papers, things like, I had a client who was a surveyor. He couldn't get access to any of his surveying tool, and she just wouldn't allow the police officer. The police officer said, well, I'll just turn up with him and he can get the things out of the shed. And she said, no, I'm not going to agree to it. And the police officer couldn't impose it on her.
There needs to be a mechanism for that, because that is a common thing. Again, I've got men ruined, financially ruined, because false allegations gone in, bail conditions not allowed. She won't letting him come across that so often.
Right.
So in an emergency situation now, so we've got a man who's falsely accused, or a woman, but it's mainly men. What do they need to do? Emergency situation. What are the steps? Emergency. What do they need to do?
I think for those who are at risk of being falsely accused, prevention is better than cure. Once you've been falsely accused, the probability is that you're going to hell in a handcart. You might get out, but you may not. So the answer really is about protecting yourself, and that's a real sad indictment on society. It's like prenups, very practical but very unromantic. So as a potential victim, your relationship's going a little bit south. You now need to be thinking, what do I need to ensure that I don't get these allegations made against me? And that's about keeping records of documents, not putting yourself in a compromising position. The way I try to explain to my clients who think something's going to happen is, imagine you're under a microscope and all the judges, all the lawyers are staring at you, looking for you to make one false move. All your WhatsApp messages are going to be looked at, all your SMS messages are going to be looked at, all your browsing history is going to be looked at. Just got to be cleaner than clean as a whistle, and maintain that position. That will, in and of itself, mitigate the risk. If you think that it's really going to happen, unfortunately, I only have one piece of advice for somebody who's going to suffer that, and that's get the hell out of Dodge. I can't see how people proceed in this romantic notion that they're going to be all right because the English justice is second to none, and justice will prevail. And it ain't
I'm
like
laughing.
that.
I'm not.
I know.
That's that romantic belief I had.
So did I, and I'm not giving up on it yet. But by gosh, we're a long way away from it. And it has. Look, it was never perfect, but was it better than some authoritarian regime? Yes, it was. Is it irredeemable? No, it's not. We can save this, but this isn't about just law. This is structural. This is societal. It's financial. It's structural. It's societal. And there's all those problems. And sadly, I can't see it getting better anytime soon, but we need to do that. There is a quote from an Al Pacino film, very much recommend it. And basically the story starts with a gentleman a young black male who, I think he was a cross-dresser, so everybody looked at him in a very negative light. And he was walked across the street in New York and got done for jaywalking. And after a series of cock-ups by lawyers, not turning up on the right day, and this, that, and the other, he ended up, unfortunately, no longer alive. And it just shows how systemically, if things constantly go wrong, how it can end up in a really terrible place. And in that film, Alan Parker directed it. Al Pacino said, "The courts do not administer justice." So let's unpack that. The courts don't administer justice. They merely provide us with an opportunity to obtain it. So you've still got to have your brief, you've still got to have your lawyer, you've still got to do your homework, you've still got to do your work. All it's doing is putting you into a factory where we can create the sausage, the outcome, the justice, but it doesn't do it automatically. And I think that's a mistake people make. And it should be the case. We go in the factory at one side and out comes justice, perfectly preserved every single time, but it doesn't. It simply allows you to put all the ingredients together, you to do all the work, and you could make a real hash of it. And if you do, then you're going to be on the wrong side of an outcome. And that's really where we're at. So what would I do? I'd prevent it first. If you're in it,
if you can,
once you're in it, if you can, get legal representation ASAP. Don't faff around.
And it's dual, especially if it's if they've got children. It's two you need, isn't it? Criminal and family.
Yeah,
it's going to affect it. Comes into both.
Yeah, well, and it can be also criminal, family. It can be business.
Oh, yes.
You've got a business as well. It can interface with all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But you got to get legal representation. Now, everybody's going to say potential will. Well, you would say that because you're a lawyer.
Of course,
but, Well,
I'm not a lawyer.
Don't do that.
And you do. I'm not a lawyer. You do need the best legal representation that you can afford. You really do. If you listen, any listeners and watchers out there, please don't ignore this advice. You do.
It's tough enough, even when you've got a lawyer.
Yes.
And then you've got to get not only a lawyer, but you've got to get one who's a specialist in that world. Then you've got to get a lawyer who's particularly familiar with that area of work, and one who's particularly committed to falsely accused.
Yep.
Well, they're hen's teeth.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I was looking at a website a couple of days ago about a company that did false paternity fraud matters. I know we're going to touch on that later. And the language that they'd written on their website was misandristic. It was saying, thankfully, men don't suffer this very much. And I'm thinking, well, one is too many.
Yes.
As much as any violence against a woman or a girl is one too many, so's that.
Yeah.
And they come across as really committed to men's rights. And actually, I was disappointed, let's put it that way. And that's the problem. But, there are very few of us out there.
Yeah, it's true. You're absolutely correct. It's very, I'm lucky I've met you and the others that the Falsely Accused Network works with, because we do value your effort and your passion. So, in this last section about false allegations, this is a common question that I get asked, and it breaks my heart when I have to answer this question. So I'm going to put this to you. Why is it that false accusers very rarely find any have any consequences for their false allegations. And we'll talk within family, in family court here.
Yeah,
because I read the judgments where even circuit judges have actually, when they've done fact finding, they said this allegation is provably false as well. It's not like they've just not tipped him over the edge, but there's no consequences for the false accusers in family court.
I don't know why it's that way, and we do sometimes mollycoddle, in this particular context, women in a way that is unhealthy. I'm very much about being fair and firm, and we must be accountable for our actions. So if there's a male perpetrator of domestic violence, fine, throw the book at him, as we were talking about Just Stop Oil and all the other people who we don't particularly, who slow our day down. There are consequences. There ought to be consequences. And it's an area where there aren't any. And I'm regularly spending eye-watering sums of clients' money to prove their innocence. Because it is proving their innocence.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's not just,
Woe betide any person who goes into court and says, well, prove it against me, because you're gonna go to hell in a handcart. So we're having to do all the hard yards to prove their innocence. And then I literally had a case, in fact, it was one that you'd referred to me, and he'd gone to another firm, and they were just scratching the surface all the way on the case. And it came to me halfway through, and I remember having to work on the weekend because we had a hearing on the Monday or the Tuesday, and my back was against the wall. I'm thinking, I can't recover this position. We're going to lose this mini hearing called an interlocutory, but we'll rectify it over the longer period, because I just don't have enough runway to fix this particular issue. I personally would have made that application, that interlocutory application. And now we've got to a place where he was accused of scalding, burning, and stabbing her. The stab was with a fork, but it was, an unpleasant stab. And there was a number of those types of incidents, so not on the highest level of violence, but near the top. And then this was having an impact on her child from a previous relationship and the child in question, and this child was petrified of him, allegedly. We went to trial on that, and I can't remember the number of allegations that there were, but she has to itemise each allegation in what's called a Scott schedule, a list of all the allegations. We won 10-0. Not one of those allegations were found against him.
Was it provably false allegation as well? So it wasn't a case of
let's be fair about this. If you ain't proved it, I ain't done it.
Yeah.
I'm tired of hearing people like Kafka saying, well, just because he was found not guilty doesn't mean he's innocent.
That's
no.
right. Yeah.
Until you have anything else, we're not buying that, because until you prove me false, then I'm the Queen of Sheba, and I want you to treat me that way. And my pronouns are Sir and Lord. I mean, come on. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So he who alleges must prove is a
Absolutely.
basic tenet of English law. So if you haven't proved it, then it didn't happen. You prove otherwise. And if you want to proceed on any other basis, then off you go. So either way, and we were able to prove a number of them that didn't happen. I can't prove I was not somewhere.
That's right.
I can prove where I was.
It's difficult sometimes to provably, to prove you didn't do something.
Right.
So,
it's a double negative.
And it can be just, she said this, he says that.
Right. I mean, for example, if there's no cameras here now,
and
it's just you and I, how do you prove you didn't sit in the middle chair? There's a chair between us, which is unoccupied. How do you prove you didn't sit in there?
You'd have to take my word for it.
Right. And you extrapolate that in relationship, saying, well, how do I prove to you that I wasn't on the sofa on that day. I was in the bedroom. I mean, it just gets difficult.
Yeah.
If you're going to make the allegation, then you need to prove it. And so, if I'm right on 6, it's probable I'm right on the others, but that may not always follow. But anyway, we got a 10-0, and the judges didn't then say, well, these lies that you perpetrated are tantamount to child abuse. It's psychological harm of the child. It's child abuse. Of course it is. But we're just going to now slowly reintroduce a child to you because we still, by implication, are going to believe her that the child is now disassociated from you. Well, we didn't believe her about anything else. Why do we need to assume that? Okay, let's do 1 week then, 2 weeks. Let's have it monitored, 2 weeks. If the child comes running to me, game over, back to normal. Let's get full weekend contact and so on. No, we had 8 weeks, 2 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours. And the child comes running to him every time. The contact centre staff, model, client, child loves him, blah, blah, blah. And I've even got the mother who said, who has to send a weekly report of the child saying, and our child X, that's not the child's name, I'm just calling it X. I think Elon Musk has a child called X. He's looking forward to seeing you. Well, if the child looking forward to seeing you, why have we got a case going for the increase and reintroduction of more and more contact? It makes no sense.
It needs to end now, doesn't it? It needs to get out of court and get back to normal.
But right, okay, you've already the contact reports say that. You're now saying that. Why are we even in court? We need to get this finished, get done. He's spending money, and guess what? She got public funding.
Oh, there we go.
So there's no rush for that one.
And there we go.
So,
I mean, consequences. I mean, I'm not calling for women who've made false allegations in the family court to be immediately jailed. I don't think that. I get that argument. It's not in the best interest of the child. So, I get that. But there must be some other consequences that we can come to an agreement with, because this has got to stop, in my opinion. Whether it's a community service or something.
Right. So remember earlier we were talking about me, myself and I. We were talking about for the greater good of society.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Well, it might not be in the child's best interest, excuse me, for the mother to go to jail, but it's in society's best interest, right? I might be a frail old man, but if I happen to unalive somebody, I still have to go to jail because it's what society requires, whether it's retribution or rehabilitation. There has to be. So I don't even start with that caveat that I recognise that the mother shouldn't go to jail. If you love your child, then don't do that. You've alienated. You're an abuser. So the child can live with the other parent. The child can grow up understanding the harsh truths of life, that there are consequences of actions, and that, you know, my father or my mother wasn't great, and this is what happened, and we're going to work on that. And consequence, because if we don't, the alternative is impunity. And so there ultimately needs to be that option, regardless of whether it's in the child's best interest or not. In my view, it's not legal position. It's certainly not public policy. But there are lots of things on an interim basis, from losing, under the Children Act, when you go for an enforcement of an order because a party has failed to comply with that order. You can community punishment, you can get a fine, you can lose your driving license, you can have other restrictions placed upon you. But let me tell you this, I'm a tenacious solicitor. I'm not your shrinking violet kind of guy.
No, you're definitely not.
Right. I have made over 30 years, guess how many applications? A lot of applications for enforcement where there's been material, intentional refusal to comply with a Children Act court order.
I bet you've had quite a lot.
Over 30 years is going to be a number. I'll give you two guesses how many of those have received a punishment of any description, but you'll only need one. 0.
Really?
I was
going to say about 10 then.
No,
I've never been. I thought it'd be low, but
I've never been successful.
So this is then feeding into why these type of people again, are doing it. I think, well, there's no consequences. Let's just crack on with it.
I consider it a level of giving myself a day off, kind of an award, if I get an order for costs against a recalcitrant party.
No.
And I had one recently where the judge made a decision on the allegations, on the Scott schedule of allegations, and there were about 10, some very serious ones and a couple of very, very insignificant ones. And the judge found him wanting on the very insignificant ones, that he'd perhaps not paid enough attention and let the child get a hand near a socket.
Right.
But the judge said, well, that's just a parenting issue. He just needs to perhaps go on a parenting course, but it's not a domestic violence type, child abuse type issue. Right. No. That's what we got against it. The mother then made an application for an appeal and blah, 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 completely ridiculous. And I got an order for costs against her on that occasion. That was I was so impressed with that. Pat myself on the back, gave myself a day off.
That's how rare it is.
Because that's how rare it is. If I gave myself a day off because it weren't rare, I wouldn't be doing much work.
Well.
And if I get one a year, I'm pretty impressed. That's how bad it is. And that's just an order for cost. And that was the maximum extent of the punishment for a recalcitrant person who won't allow any contact when no fines are being made against a man or parent. Tragic. It's tragic because ultimately the child is losing, or children are losing. And this is emotional, psychological
child
harm.
Ruined. And it is mental health. The mental health of the child will carry into their adulthood.
Right, of course.
And then we've got, obviously, from our perspective, we're helping mainly men that are going through. So we've got their mental health as well. And it's just got to stop. I just wish it'd disappear.
And we know that children who have less than healthy breakdown of relationships, the level of delinquency increases by about 70%. So they're 70% more likely to have a divorce themselves. They're about 70% more likely to commit a criminal offence themselves, and they're 70% more likely to engage in unsafe practices like taking drugs, being promiscuous, etc. I think the number is about 70%. Wow. Somebody could quote me on it.
The knock-on effect is huge.
And it's a very, it's a very big number. And so, you're going through a divorce, and if you're an unkind parent, all you're saying is, I'm happy for my child to go through a divorce. If you have a positive relationship and say, I really don't like you, Mr. Husband, or I really don't like you, Mrs. Wife, but we're going to smile in front of the child and we're going to allow for a continuation of a relationship, then we're going to reduce the chance of our own child not going through a divorce.
Yeah.
And if we look at the data, and I'm certainly be happy to do that on another occasion, we can look at the data about single parents and fathers raising children in a single parent household and mothers raising children in a single parent household compared to a couple, whether it's same-sex or same-sex or heterosexual. The data is very interesting. Very interesting.
I think
it might not be where you might think it might be.
No.
In terms of delinquency. And there's a lot of data on that.
Yeah.
A lot of data. So I don't know why there isn't the accountability. It needs to be there.
Absolutely.
I keep pushing there, but I warn my clients, look, we're going to go for an enforcement. Even if we win, we might get the order enforced, but is there going to be any punishment? I'll give them a 5% chance, 10% chance. It's very low odds.
No.
Very low odds, unfortunately.
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.